I am delighted to present a series of 1-minute videos. These videos represent a complete metaphysics, which I define as an all-encompassing philosophy. It all began in 2013 when the Philosophical Society of England published a paper that I wrote titled Aristotle's Noun. Soon after this, they invited me to expand on the paper with a series of essays which they ultimately published under the title Metaphysical Notes. Finally, I turned these notes into a major work titled Everything Briefly. The Philosophy Sharing Foundation of Malta picked this up and invited me then to deliver their annual philosophy lecture of 2025. The present series is a radical reworking of that lecture. I have chosen AI avatars to present each section.
There were no names or definitions when the world began. It was all, as the Hebrew Bible calls it, without form and void. Tohu wabohu. Rapidly, things formed: quarks, electrons, protons, and neutrons. The first atomic nuclei appeared, primarily hydrogen and helium. Then, over billions of years, gravity brought together gas clouds to form stars, galaxies, and planets. On our own planet, minuscule life forms arose, becoming increasingly complex, until finally plants and animals appeared. In our very recent planetary past, rational beings emerged. These beings were able to name and define those entities which exist in our world. A tree was a tree, a planet, a quark was a quark.
In all the vastness of our universe, the words that we use take all that there is and turn it into singular entities. Each word that I use is a radical, ruthless reduction from the whole. Suppose that we speak the name of a city, Valletta. Once we have named Valletta, there is nothing outside that word that comes into that word. You would be able to take me to the edge of Valletta and say, "You are now inside Valletta." But take one step in that direction, see, and you will be outside Valletta. A word is typically a very rigorously defined thing, and there is nothing outside that word that belongs to that word.
Much the same may be said about sentences, which are combinations of words, sometimes called a single thought. I speak, of course, of ordinary language sentences. Just as there is nothing outside a word that belongs to that word, so there is nothing outside a sentence that belongs to that sentence. The combination of words that makes up the sentence rigorously excludes everything that the sentence contains. One may have conglomerations of sentences too, a paragraph, or a book, or an encyclopedia. All their words together exclude everything that is not contained in those words. We strip away the whole world that lies beyond.
We need not merely use words to describe our world. We may use scientific language instead. When we do, we often dispense with words and use what we call variables, such as X or Y or Z. These are often more tightly defined than the words of ordinary language. But just like the words of ordinary language, they take all that there is and turn it into singular entities. They rigorously exclude everything they are not. The scientific way of putting it is that we exclude unwanted influences on independent variables. If we allow variables to include anything they are not meant to include, our calculations break down. Variables must exclude all that they are not.
As is the case with words, so with variables. We may string many variables together to form equations. We may use equations, too, to build things larger than equations. We may build models, systems, and algorithms. These now use various variables, sometimes a vast number of them, that we combine. In this case, Our larger arrangements of variables exclude everything that the combination of variables excludes. Whatever they do not include in total lies outside them. Therefore, no matter how sophisticated our scientific constructions, they always strip off a great deal. We shall refer to these combinations of variables as wholes. A helium atom is a whole. The model of DNA is a whole. A planet is a whole.
If anything is a whole, which is nameable and definable, it must strip off a great deal. We shall call it a finite whole, since it is strictly constrained. But what shall we call that which is stripped off? I shall name it, paradoxically, the nameless whole. What is the nameless whole if it lies beyond every name and definition? We cannot, of course, name it or describe it, but we can suppose that it is vastly greater than any single finite whole, because it cuts away everything that every finite whole is not. But notice that what we exclude from finite wholes does not just vanish. It continues to exist. In fact, it becomes the unanticipated side effect.
It has been the case throughout history. From the earliest evidence of philosophy, there has been the notion that there is a whole which exists beyond words and definitions. Lao Tzu famously said, "The nameless is the beginning of the 10,000 things. The origin of things is beyond names. It is beyond definitions. And out of this nameless, the 10,000 things, uncountable things, emerge." This concept has continued into recent times and present time. Immanuel Kant wrote of the unconditioned. Heidegger wrote about being. Buber wrote about that which has not yet entered the world. Derrida wrote about the unnameable. All speak of a world beyond finite wholes.
At a certain point, in our very recent planetary past, we began to name and define things. At the same time, we began to exclude and ignore all that we did not name and define. Let us consider what this means. Firstly, it means that any finite whole is a reduction from the nameless whole. Secondly, it means that any finite whole is incomplete. There is a vast and nameless whole which lies beyond it. Thirdly, that which lies beyond names and definitions, we do not know, and that which we do not know, we do not control. That which lies outside of our control is vast and unknown. I shall apply this now to various areas of our existence.
Firstly, we may see language as a reduction from the nameless whole. Every noun that we use is named and defined, thus casting off all it excludes. As soon as we name Valletta, we cast off everything it is not. In the same way, every verb that we use, if we say that Valletta is a peaceful place, we cast off all that was and is to be, reducing all of time only to the now, the is. And because no finite whole is complete, in principle language is incomplete and cannot provide us with a complete grip on reality. The most it can offer is a complete grip on finite wholes, if these are truly finite.
Like language, science is a reduction from the nameless whole. This simple fact tells us that, when we use science, we cut off the nameless whole. The philosophers Kamla and Lorenzen wrote, "Physics investigates processes by progressively screening things out. That is the way that science advances. It is the scientific method. In the process, science screens out more and more. Not only does it screen it out, it ultimately excludes and ignores it. And every time that we apply the science to the world, we repeat this screening out. We may ascribe fantastic achievements to science. Yet in the context of the nameless whole, that which we exclude from science is immense and dangerous. It can strike back.
Causality requires that one thing causes another. For that to happen, we must name and define those things which are causes. However, outside of finite wholes, we cannot name or define things. there is a vast realm that lies beyond causes. The physicist Percy W. Bridgman wrote, "The causality concept is relative to the whole background of the system which contains the causally connected event. That is to say, that causality is only a concept that works within the context of finite wholes. We cannot speak of causality beyond such wholes. Therefore, we do not exist in a universe where causality is king." Ernst Mach wrote, "There is no cause nor effect in nature."
Philosopher Simon Blackburn described consciousness as the theatre where my experiences and thoughts have their existence. While consciousness is a riddle, we may penetrate it to a certain degree. Consciousness exists because the nameless whole exists. If the nameless whole did not exist, we would be left only with finite wholes, and finite wholes cannot explain anything but mechanical behaviour in a closed system of cause and effect. The nameless whole may be the necessary condition for the existence of consciousness. Consciousness exists because it is not limited by cause and effect within it. There is always a loose end where there is neither cause nor effect. Consciousness is therefore a monument to the nameless whole.
We have said that every word and every variable excludes everything it is not. Therefore, the very creation of knowledge cuts off vast areas of reality. We name and define something and exclude the rest. Paradoxically, therefore, education may become the enemy of education, as it focuses on subjects which cut off all the rest. Einstein suggested this when he wrote, "The value of an education lies in the training of the mind to think something that cannot be learned from textbooks. By cutting off what lies beyond finite wholes, we create many dangers for our world through the things that we omit. What we need, therefore, is to find words and concepts which lie beyond a standard syllabus."
Many philosophies exclude ethics. Yet ethics is everything we do and everything we say. It is essential to philosophy. There are many systems of ethics which exist side by side, such as business ethics, environmental ethics, or legal ethics. Every system of ethics is a finite whole. We may say, it is an X. As such, it excludes everything, not X. In reality, ethics may have no feelings for justice denied, or justice delayed, broken justice, or a justice that is overly zealous. It does not always reach as far as justice for the human heart, or the realities of this world. This calls for ethical reflection beyond our existing frameworks to address the omissions of finite wholes.
All words and all variables radically exclude all things outside themselves. Those things outside themselves are nameless and undefined. Because they are nameless and undefined, they lie beyond our control. Now we do not like a loss of control, and yet our whole existence is characterized by insecurity and vulnerability. In the end, we lose our very lives. In order to conquer the world in which we live, to have complete mastery over it, we would need control over all eventualities. This is impossible. And yet we often seek control, where control turns into overreach, social credit systems, 5-year plans, or simply authoritarianism. Freedom begins with an understanding of one principle, that many things lie beyond our control.
Science, within our own generation, has quietly entered a major new phase. We had Newtonian physics, Einsteinian physics, and quantum mechanics. And now, big data, which is extremely large data sets which we analyze computationally. This includes artificial intelligence, which we train with big data. Every second today, the algorithms make unthinkably many calculations. These algorithms, on the one hand, span the globe, and on the other hand, scour the devices in our own hands. But now, the devastating problem. Our computations, our algorithms, are interested only in those things that the algorithms include. Everything else, which belongs to the nameless whole, they cut off. It is excluded from our thinking, and from the thinking of our machines.
In all the aeons since its appearance, the Earth has developed organically. There was nothing and no one to name or define it, and therefore to control it. Then came the first beings who could. Carl Jaspers wrote of various historical eras: prehistory, ancient civilizations, the axial period, and the scientific technological age. Each was characterized by more and more naming and defining, and increasing exclusion of that which is not named and defined. Most recently, with the advent of big data, there was an inconceivable explosion of things that we name and define, and also exclude. This exclusion, with all forms of exclusion, has led to a massive loss of control. This explains much of our crisis today.
In the past, the nameless whole has been shrouded in Oriental mystery or steeped in enigmatic language with little basis in objective reality. With a more careful examination of the nameless whole, we may better understand finite wholes. By focusing only on that which we can name and define, we risk hubris and environmental destruction because we ignore the interconnected nature of existence. The unnamed whole calls for a return to humility, urging us to recognize the limits of our knowledge in the face of the indefinable. I confess that the philosophy I have presented here has been too simply presented, but this was necessary for such 1-minute episodes. I hope that ultimately the thrust of it is understood.
Thomas O. Scarborough is a congregational minister who holds a master's degree in leadership and theology from Fuller Theological Seminary in Pasadena and a master's degree in leadership and philosophy deconstruction from the South African Theological Seminary in Johannesburg.